All right, let's get started. Today, we're going deep on a topic I know you're really interested in,
Yeah.
neuroregeneration,
Okay.
the brain's ability to heal itself. And you specifically wanted to talk about this compound,
Did I?
beta-hydroxybutyrate,
Yeah.
BHB,
BADH.
and its potential for treating nervous system injuries.
So for a long time, we thought the brain had very limited ability
Yeah.
to repair itself. But more and more, we're finding that it's way more resilient than we ever thought.
Yeah, and the research we're going to be looking at today,
Mm-hmm.
it supports that, right? This is a study from August 2024.
Yeah.
It was published in Pharmaceuticals. And basically, these scientists simulated a brain injury in a petri dish,
Okay.
and they added BHB, and the results were really interesting.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, me too. But before we get into the nitty-gritty,
Right.
let's zoom out a little bit. Millions of people around the world are affected by neurological disorders.
It's true.
Stroke, traumatic brain injury, things like that.
Huge problem.
Huge problem. And the costs,
Right.
both in terms of human suffering and healthcare expenditure.
Oh, yeah. Astronomical.
Astronomical, yeah. And there's really a lack of effective treatments
Yes.
that can actually repair that damaged brain tissue.
Right.
So that's why finding new therapies is so important.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, so BHB ketone body.
Yes.
You probably already know this, but our brains usually run on glucose.
That's the primary fuel, yeah.
Right. But when that's in short supply,
Okay.
like after a brain injury,
Yes.
ketones can step in as an alternative fuel.
Right.
It's like a backup generator.
Right.
Right, when the power's out.
Exactly. And that's what makes this study so interesting.
Yeah.
Because it suggests that BHB might not just be providing fuel,
Yeah.
it might actually be actively promoting the regeneration of nerve cells.
Oh, wow. Okay, so let's break down how they actually studied this.
Okay.
They used a technique called a scratch assay.
I've heard of that.
Have you? So it's basically creating like a tiny controlled wound in a layer of rat neurons in a dish.
Okay.
So it mimics a brain injury in a way that lets them observe how the cells respond.
Right. It's a clever way to study cell migration and wound healing.
Exactly.
So in this case, they wanted to see how the neurons would respond to this injury with and without BHB.
And what they found was pretty remarkable.
What'd they find?
The neurons that were treated with the BHB showed a much greater ability to migrate
Wow.
and regenerate compared to the ones that didn't get the BHB.
Interesting. So how much greater? Are we talking like a little bit or a lot?
A lot. We're talking almost double the cell density
Wow.
in the injured area for the BHB group.
Okay.
And that gap, the damaged area, decreased by almost 75%.
That's a lot.
It is. It is. So BHB is doing more than just helping cells survive.
Right.
It's actively promoting nerve repair and regrowth.
It's like it's kickstarting the healing process.
Right, like a signal flare, right?
Yeah.
Calling in the repair crew. And then it gets even more interesting when you look at the specific proteins that they found increased in the BHB-treated neurons.
Oh, okay.
They saw a significant increase in synapsin-I and 3,3-tubulin.
So those sound like scientific jargon.
They do. But what they represent is really exciting.
What do they represent?
So synapsin-I is crucial for forming connections between neurons.
The synapses.
The synapses, yeah, which are essential for communication in the brain.
Makes sense.
And then 3,3-tubulin is a key building block for microtubules, which are like the skeletons that give neurons their shape and help them transport all the vital substances.
So it's like BHB is not only helping the cells move into the damaged area,
right,
but it's also giving them the tools and the materials to actually rebuild those essential connections.
Yes.
And reinforce their structure.
Exactly. It's not enough just to have the cells there.
No.
They got to be connected and communicating effectively.
It's like if the brain is a complex electrical grid. BHB is helping to repair the damaged wires, but also making sure those wires are properly insulated and connected so that the flow of information can be restored.
That's a great analogy. Okay, so we're seeing BHB having this positive impact.
Right.
But how's it actually working?
Yeah, that's the big question.
The researchers proposed a number of potential mechanisms. And frankly, it seems like BHB might be a bit of a multitasker.
A multitasker, huh?
When it comes to brain health.
Yeah, it really does. It's like BHB has this whole arsenal of tools at its disposal.
Yeah, like a giant toolbox.
Exactly.
So how do we even begin to figure out which tools it's using and which ones are the most important?
That is the question.
Yeah.
And that's what we'll get into next.
So we've established that BHB seems to be doing some pretty incredible things in terms of neuroregeneration.
It really is amazing.
But like we were just saying, there are so many potential mechanisms at play here.
Right. It's like a whole arsenal of tools.
It's like BHB has this giant toolbox, right?
Exactly.
So where do we even begin to try to untangle all of that?
Well, I think it helps to kind of categorize those potential mechanisms into a few key areas.
Okay.
First, there's BHB's role as an alternative energy source.
Right.
And this is especially important in situations where the brain's normal fuel, glucose, is scarce or its metabolism is messed up somehow.
Right, like after a brain injury.
Exactly. So BHB steps in, provides that essential energy when the main power grid is down.
Yeah, it's like that backup generator.
Exactly. Keeping those neurons from going dark.
I like that analogy, the backup generator.
And what's even more fascinating is that BHB might not just be a substitute for glucose.
Oh.
It might actually be a more efficient energy source for neurons.
Really?
Some studies are suggesting that it can actually produce more energy per molecule than glucose can.
Wow.
Which could be huge for supporting brain function.
So you're saying BHB is like upgrading the brain's power supply?
Yeah, you could think of it that way.
And if that's the case, you have to wonder if that has implications for healthy aging as well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because our brains become less efficient at using glucose as we get older.
It's true.
So that's definitely an area that deserves more research.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've got BHB as this brain power boost.
Mm-hmm.
What else is in its toolbox? You mentioned something about BHB enhancing blood flow to the brain.
Yes, that's another key area where BHB may be working its magic. Studies show that BHB can significantly increase cerebral blood flow.
So how much are we talking?
Up to 30%.
Wow.
That's a lot more oxygen and nutrients getting delivered to the brain.
So it's not just providing fuel at the cellular level, it's also making sure the entire neighborhood has what it needs. Right.
Precisely. Like improving the brain's infrastructure to support healing and recovery.
I like that. Okay, and then there's the BDNF connection, which we talked about a little bit earlier.
Right.
Can you remind us what BDNF is and why it's so important?
Sure. BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
Catchy name.
It's this protein that's essential for the growth, survival, and function of neurons.
So it's like fertilizer for brain cells.
Exactly. Helping them flourish, make those connections.
And we know BDNF is especially important for learning and memory.
Right. And cognitive function.
And there's growing evidence that BHB might be able to increase those BDNF levels.
There is.
Which could be really significant, especially for people with brain injuries.
It could be a game changer because BDNF is so crucial for promoting the growth and repair of those damaged neurons.
And thinking about this in the context of healthy aging again,
yeah.
If BHB can boost BDNF, wouldn't that suggest it could also help maintain cognitive function as we age?
It's a very real possibility, and it's one that researchers are looking into.
Even in the absence of injury?
Yes, even in the absence of injury. Because, you see, BDNF levels naturally decline with age.
That's true.
And that decline is thought to contribute to cognitive decline.
So if BHB can help maintain or even increase those BDNF levels,
it could potentially offer protection against those age-related changes.
That would be amazing. Okay, so all this is super exciting.
It is.
But we've also talked about how damaging inflammation and oxidative stress can be.
Right.
Especially after a brain injury. It's like they add insult to injury, hindering the healing process.
Absolutely. They make a bad situation worse.
But it seems like BHB might have a role to play here too, right?
Yes, you're right. Inflammation and oxidative stress are major players in the aftermath of brain injury.
Yeah.
And they can definitely contribute to long-term damage.
So how does BHB help with that?
Well, the research suggests that BHB might be able to actually mitigate those harmful processes.
So it's like BHB is a firefighter.
I like that.
Putting out those flames of inflammation and neutralizing those dangerous free radicals.
Yeah, it's a great analogy.
That can damage those brain cells.
And what's particularly interesting is this anti-inflammatory and antioxidant potential of BHB isn't limited to the brain.
Really?
We're seeing those same effects in other parts of the body as well.
Yeah.
Suggesting that it might have even broader implications for overall health and preventing disease.
That's incredible. And then there's this whole concept of BHB influencing gene expression.
Right, epigenetics.
Which really blew my mind.
It is a fascinating area.
You're telling me that BHB might actually be able to talk to our DNA?
Well, in a way.
And kind of nudge it in a direction that promotes healing and regeneration?
It's pretty amazing, right?
It really is.
This field of epigenetics is showing us just how much our environment and our lifestyle choices can actually influence which genes are turned on or off.
Right.
And BHB may be one of those factors that can have a positive effect on gene expression.
It's like BHB is a master conductor, right?
Yeah.
Orchestrating this whole symphony of cellular processes to keep the brain healthy.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It captures the complexity and the beauty of what's happening.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Okay, but with all this incredible potential, there are still some questions that need to be answered.
Oh, of course.
And a lot more research needs to be done.
Definitely.
So what are some of the key areas you think future research should focus on?
Well, I think first and foremost, we need to make sure that the incredible benefits we're seeing in these preclinical studies actually hold true in humans.
Right, because what works in a petri dish or even in animals
Doesn't always translate perfectly to humans.
Yeah, exactly. We need to have those real-world trials, those clinical trials, with BHB supplementation.
Absolutely,
in patients with all sorts of neurological injuries.
Right, to see if BHB can truly deliver on its promise.
And those clinical trials will also be important for figuring out the right dosage, timing of BHB, right? Like, how much do we need to take?
Exactly.
How often for how long?
All important questions.
And this particular study used a special type of BHB called a racemimic mixture, which includes both the D and the L isomers. So I'm curious, would it be beneficial to see if that specific formulation has any advantages?
Good point. You're right to highlight that.
Over just using DBHB alone.
A racemic mixture just means it contains equal amounts of those two mirror image forms of the molecule. Kind of like having a left-handed and a right-handed version of the same tool.
Okay, I get it.
And we used to think that only the D isomer of BHB was biologically active.
Yeah.
But newer research is suggesting that the L isomer might have important roles to play as well.
Oh, interesting.
Particularly when it comes to neuroprotection and reducing inflammation.
So maybe this particular racemic mixture is more effective than just using the DBHB.
It's definitely a possibility. That's something else that needs further research.
Figuring out what each isomer contributes.
Yeah, and that could lead to more targeted, more effective therapies down the line.
Okay, that makes sense. And of course, BHB isn't a magic bullet.
No, it's not.
It's probably going to be most effective when it's used along with other therapies.
Absolutely.
Like physical therapy, occupational therapy.
Right, speech therapy.
Right, it's about integrating it into this whole comprehensive treatment plan.
Exactly, to address all the different needs of patients with those neurological injuries.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And of course, safety is always a top priority.
Of course. We need to know the long-term effects of BHB supplementation.
Make sure it's safe to use long-term without any unwanted side effects.
Exactly. Because while research so far suggests that BHB is well tolerated, we need those longer-term studies to confirm its safety.
And we also need to keep digging into those mechanisms, right?
Absolutely. The more we learn about how BHB actually works, the better equipped we'll be to develop targeted and effective therapies.
I completely agree with you. It really feels like we've stumbled upon this key that unlocks this whole network of pathways.
It's like a secret passage leading to all these possibilities
that are so essential for brain health and resilience.
I couldn't agree more.
It's really amazing to think about all the possibilities that BHB might hold.
It is.
And speaking of possibilities, we've talked a lot about BHB and its potential for treating brain injuries. But what about its implications for brain health in general?
Okay.
Even when there's no injury present?
That's a great question.
That's what we'll explore next as we continue our deep dive. We've spent a lot of time talking about BHB's potential for repairing the brain after an injury. Yeah. But you were also curious about its implications for overall brain health and healthy aging. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about that.
Okay, yeah, I think that's where things get really exciting.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen how BHB might help the brain heal after damage.
Right.
But could it also help maintain or even boost brain function throughout life?
Like, is that even possible?
It's a very real possibility.
Okay.
And there's actually some research that supports that idea.
Okay, so we know that as we get older, cognitive decline is a big concern.
Yeah, it's a fact of life for a lot of people.
Our brains change. We become more vulnerable to neurodegenerative diseases.
Unfortunately, yes.
So is there any chance that BHB could help with that?
Well, there's a growing body of evidence that suggests it just might. Remember all those benefits we talked about with BHB?
Yeah, the energy boost.
The increased blood flow, the BDNF, the
Yeah.
reduction in inflammation.
Yeah, all that stuff.
And even the impact on gene expression.
It was a lot.
All those things aren't just relevant for recovering from an injury.
Right.
They're important for maintaining a healthy brain.
Okay.
as we age.
So BHB isn't just like a mechanic fixing broken parts.
Right.
It's like a trainer.
Yeah, a brain trainer.
Helping our brains stay in shape.
Exactly, keeping them sharp.
As we get older.
Exactly.
And some studies have shown that BHB can actually improve cognitive function.
There have been some promising results.
It's healthy older adults.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
It is.
So it's not just about slowing down the decline.
Right.
It could actually make our brains better.
It's about enhancing brain power.
As we age.
As we age, exactly.
Wow. So BHB might not just be a treatment for disease.
Right.
It might be a tool for optimizing brain health.
That's the idea.
Throughout our lives.
Throughout life.
That's pretty amazing. And when you consider all of that,
Mm-hmm.
and then you think about those anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties.
Which we talked about earlier.
Right. BHB could have benefits for a lot of different health issues.
It could.
Not just neurological ones.
Exactly.
So BHB might have these far-reaching implications.
You might.
For our overall health and well-being.
It's a possibility.
That's pretty amazing. But like with anything new, we have to be cautious.
Of course, we always need to be cautious.
Still don't know everything about BHB.
That's true.
And more research is definitely needed.
We need more research to confirm these early findings, to figure out the best doses, and to make sure it's safe in the long term.
Right. Long-term safety is important.
Absolutely.
We need to understand those mechanisms.
Yeah, how it all works.
Even better.
Exactly.
But I think it's safe to say
I think so.
that we're seeing a big shift.
A paradigm shift in how we think about brain health.
And the potential for new treatments.
And new ways to intervene.
We found this treasure chest.
A treasure chest full of potential.
Yeah, it's full of possibilities. And while it's still early,
it is early.
The future of BHB research looks incredibly promising.
It really does.
It's giving us this glimpse into a future where we might not only repair the brain after damage, but also maintain and even enhance
amazing possibilities.
Brain health throughout life.
It's a really exciting time to be in this field.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what we discover next.
Who knows what other secrets BHB might hold?
Exactly.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into BHB and neuroregeneration.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Of course.
And to everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed exploring this topic with us.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating discussion.
And remember, there's always more to learn.
Keep those brains buzzing.
Keep those brains buzzing.